Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Utah Stories Hidden Utah podcast. My name is Richard Markosian. On the program today, a very exciting guest. It is Lex Scott, the leader of Black Lives Matter Utah. So going into this interview, I had read this book called Ghetto Side. It's written by Jill Leovy, and it's an amazing book about black on black crime, inner city crime, how the death rate of black people, black men between the ages of 20 and 40 is almost the same in terms of the murder rate as men the same age living in Baghdad in Iraq. It's a sad state of affairs for inner city black people, especially living in violent areas. I wanted to talk to her about this book, and I also wanted to talk to her about the goals of the Black Lives Matter chapter in Utah. So I've heard about the national goals, that they basically are a Marxist organization, that they want to uproot capitalism and basically tear down our country. I got a totally different impression of the entire organization talking to Lex today. She was very articulate. She stated their goals very clearly, and they were all related to nonviolence and criminal justice reform. I hope you enjoy listening to this conversation as much as I enjoy talking to Lex. It was really one of the funnest podcasts I've ever done. The Utah Story Show is brought to you by Canyon Meadows Grass-Fed Beef. If you haven't tried pasture-raised beef yet, you absolutely need to go and try it. Their ranch is located in eastern Utah in beautiful Altamont. They have thick, lush pastures that are super high. The cows eat pasture and grass their entire lives. It is an outstanding product. It's grass-fed, pasture-raised beef is more healthy. It has more good cholesterol in it. You can eat more of it if you're afraid of eating too much meat, but you seriously have to go try it. It's good for the earth. It's good for you and has delicious flavor. There's a special offer going on right now for Utah Stories podcast listeners. Use offer code UT2020 and you'll get 10% off your first order. So go check out their ribs, their ribeyes, their filet mignons. They have amazing products. We just got a half a cow from Canyon Meadows. I'm super excited to go and start roasting some steaks and smoking my brisket. It's going to be amazing. So visit them right now at cmrbeef.com. Do you ever take a step back and think, is this really happening? Is this like really America before our eyes?
And it's the calm before the storm. I feel like, it's revealing who America always was. The racism that has always been here is being revealed on a massive level now.
So when you say the calm before the storm, do you mean that it's going to get way worse before it gets better? I mean, that's could be
way worse before it gets better.
Okay. Yeah, well, that's why I'm glad you came on. Because if it does get way worse, I think we want to know what's probably going to happen.
Yeah.
So thanks, everybody, for tuning into the Utah Stories program. We're streaming this live, but we're going to do an edited version of this, and we're going to be talking now to Lex Scott from Black Lives Matter Utah. She's the president of the Utah chapter of Black Lives Matter. Thanks a lot for coming on, Lex.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so, I mean, when I saw the footage come out of downtown Salt Lake City at 4th South, right in front of the library, of a police car turned over, burning, and people celebrating that a police car was turned over and burning, I thought, now this is not something I've ever witnessed before here in Utah, in what we consider Small Lake City. Do you expect it to be riotous here in Salt Lake even?
Well, and I want to make it clear, that wasn't Black Lives Matter. That had nothing to do with Black Lives Matter. We do not incite violence. We don't destroy property. We've never had an arrest in 7 years. I've been in this movement 7 years.
Yeah, and we discovered that it was not the peaceful demonstrators who started that.
Yeah.
It was a group of young people. Some of them might have been loosely affiliated with Antifa, but the whole idea of turning over the cop car it was just this organic idea because the cop car was left right in the path of the protesters, and some of them really wanted to turn over a cop car.
You know, I just think it's these people in states like Utah, Idaho, all across the country. They watch CNN and they see Minneapolis on fire. They see Ferguson on fire. They see Baltimore on fire. And they don't see 8 hours of peaceful protest. They don't see the police shooting into a vigil full of grandparents and kids. They don't see...
That's happened? Where did that happen?
That was after Mike Brown was killed. His family held a vigil. It had babies, grandparents. Police surrounded them and shot tear gas into them. They don't see the police shooting tear gas at people's homes while they're asleep in Ferguson. They don't see how we were sitting on the ground in Minneapolis having a peaceful protest and police just ran up and started, tear gassing us and shooting us with rubber bullets. And so when you're in Utah and you just see these fires and you want to be a bandwagon person, you're like, you know what? Let's set this police car on fire. It hurts our movement, Black Lives Matter. It's ridiculous that it happened. We understand that the riot is the language of the unheard. You can replace a building or a police car. You can never replace Freddie Gray, Mike Brown, Patrick Harmon, Bobby Duckworth, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor. I like to say, if you watch a building burn and it upsets you more than watching George Floyd die, you're the problem. We mourn broken bodies, not broken buildings. However, I believe that this is a chess game. And so I've been focusing on passing police reform because, people are out here protesting. I've been protesting for 7 years. I'm sick of protesting. Let's go ahead and pass some police reform and move on with our lives.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at.
Well, that's why I wanted to have you on the program. It's because we need to speak in the language of law and rationality and not just emotions. Because I think if it gets too emotionally charged, the rioting takes over and the civil disobedience, which is super important to our country moving forward, gets left aside. And right now we need civil disobedience. We need people to, I think people have every right to protest whenever they feel like there is injustice. And what I realize is coming into this whole issue of Black Lives Matter and wanting to do some reporting on it, it's not really talked about much in Utah in the mainstream press. I don't see a lot of places, a lot of news outlets really delving into it, what it is you want to accomplish. What would you describe your main goals are?
Okay, I will get into that, but the mainstream media does cover us, just so you know.
Well, here in Utah, the mainstream local media.
Yeah, they make me do so many interviews. Like Fox 13 is meeting me outside here at 3:30.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
I've already done 2 media interviews today.
Wow.
They're covering us a lot. Our platform is on our website, blacklivesmatterutah.com, and then click on police reform initiatives. And so our platform is the following. The number one most important thing is police cannot be allowed to investigate their own crimes and find themselves innocent anymore. Okay, we want independent oversight of police. We want civilian review boards that have the power to subpoena police, investigate police, fire police, and bring charges against police. We want all body cam footage to be made public within 10 days of every officer involved shooting, unedited with sound. We want officers who turn their body cams off during critical incidents to be fired from their jobs. We want de-escalation training in every police department, but I just want to say that's not the golden cow. We've implemented de-escalation training into Salt Lake PD. Officer-involved shootings have gone up since then. I'm not impressed with de-escalation training. I just want to say that. I'm probably one of the only leaders in Black Lives Matter that pushes for less than lethal weapons. And so that means the police department throws away a ton of shotguns per year. I want those shotguns repurposed into rubber bullet guns, and I want every patrol car to have a rubber bullet gun. I want officers to who are fired from one agency not to be rehired at another agency. I want a national and local police misconduct database so we know which officers are misbehaving. I want qualified immunity reform so you can sue a police officer if he hurts or kills you or your family member. We want a data collection database that shows the race and ethnicity of every person the police are stopping, pulling over, and arresting, so we know that they're profiling Black and brown people and we can prove it. We want more diversity in hiring, more diversity training for police officers. What else? I mean, I have so many things that I want.
So, I mean, that all sounds great, especially when I spent a couple years covering police corruption in Cottonwood Heights, and to see it boiling over now, that should have happened 6 years ago.
Yeah, when they were targeting that restaurant.
They've been absolutely corrupt for 7 years, ever since they started up, and
they're corrupt.
That wasn't getting mainstream media attention. I did a really in-depth 2-year study, conclusive proof that they were absolutely corrupt, and that their police chief was telling his officers to target that bar, Canyon Inn, and with impunity they could just pull people out of their cars, accuse them of drunk driving. A lot of the people ended up being Mormon. And it was awful. There was no repercussion because internal affairs was internal, and they didn't find themselves to be corrupt. Yeah. That's what it came down to. We did our investigation. We don't find ourselves to be corrupt.
Yeah.
And so that number one thing you said, the review should be a civilian appointed counsel be doing internal review. That's absolutely, I agree with you there.
Correct.
One thing that I noticed though, that I've been trying to learn about Black murder rates, homicide rates in inner cities. It is incredibly high. It's been incredibly high for almost 2 decades. And I don't see that being an objective of Black Lives Matter, to reduce those murders that just happen with impunity. Yeah. How come that isn't part of...
So every time we bring up Black Lives Matter, people say, why aren't you addressing Black on Black crime? And then I say, we'll start addressing Black on Black crime when white people want to start addressing white on white crime. According to the FBI 2017 crime report, white people commit the majority of murders in this country. And that's percentage-wise, not number-wise, because there's a higher percentage of murders committed by white people. When white people want to start addressing white mass shooters, how the majority of serial killers are white, how when I do a sex offender search of my neighborhood, it's a ton of white pedophiles, white rapists.
I mean, that's definitely true.
Yeah.
Of
also,
course, statistically speaking,
another point is most crime is intra-racial. That means if you grow up in a Black neighborhood, the crimes that are perpetrated upon you are done by Black people. If you're in a Latinx neighborhood, those crimes perpetrated upon you are done by Latinx people. If you're in a white neighborhood, those crimes are done. And so when people bring up Chicago, which they do the majority of the time, Chicago doesn't even have the highest murder rate in the country. And people love to bring up Chicago. When another reason is when Black people are murdering Black people, those Black people are put in jail.
But that's the thing. They're largely not being put in jail. Most of those murders are not being solved. So what I looked at, I read this really incredible book, Ghetto Side. She is an embedded correspondent with the LA Times. She followed the crime in Compton, South Central Los Angeles for 10 years to write this book. And what she found was for every square mile of South Central LA, there are 40 unsolved, unconvicted murders that happen for every single square mile. So every person living there knows, like, 5 to 10 people have been murdered.
Yeah.
And they might even know the murderer, and the murderer isn't serving any time in prison, and these murderers are walking around.
Yeah.
And I'm
where are the all lives matter people, and why are and also here's another thing, there's 2 more points to the black on black crime thing. It should tell the world a lot, that black people, we distrust the police so much that we are not going to call the police, even if someone murders our family member. And then another point is that there are so many groups in places like Chicago and Missouri who have shouted out and cried for help and said, hey, please help us to stop these murders in our communities. There's so many. Chicago Urban League is one of the major ones who goes around and does this. But again, you have murders in a concentrated area, but then in the white community, white people are so spread out. They're murdering just as many people per day. It's not in one city. It is countrywide. They're murdering more people. So again, I have to ask white people to address the crime in their own community.
Well, if you have a suburban murder, for example, someone's murdered in the suburbs, that murder is going to get tons of media attention.
Yes.
The police are going to investigate it. Well, I guess depending on how the circumstances are, but it's typically going to get a ton of police investigation. It's going to be getting a ton of attention, and a lot of witnesses will come in and they'll try to solve the murder. What Miss Leovi points out is by far the majority of people, black people who are murdered in the United States in inner cities, they're not properly investigated. These, like you said, there's such a broad distrust of the police that they don't think police even care.
Yeah.
They don't think the police want to do their jobs and investigate the crimes, and they don't want to cooperate either. Snitches get stitches is a common phrase used, and so it's hard for me to imagine the state of affairs living in an inner city, because I've never even known anybody who's been murdered. I don't know anybody even who knows anybody who's been murdered. But to have it be that prevalent in your inner city, I think the distrust that the white or the police department that it's made up of all ethnic minorities and whites, that they're not even going to do their job is the prevalent sentiment. Is that true?
Well, I think it's that, and I think, I've said this a lot of times. I would love to know what the police do. They have something called a clearance rate. So each city has a clearance rate on their police department. How many robberies are they solving? How many murders? How many rapes? How many sexual assaults? And I really would love to know, and I've asked the police department for this, I want your clearance rates. If there's a city, there was a podcaster who did this one podcast. He was like, I'm not even going to publish the murder clearance rates for certain cities, because people might just go there and commit murders because the clearance rates are so low for police solving murders. Robberies, I mean, we've all been robbed, and we've all had the police say there's nothing they can do. Every person knows a woman who's been raped, and a rapist isn't in prison. And if they do catch them and convict, which is so rare, they sit on these sex offender registries in our streets. And so, when you see black people killing other black people, David Banner has a quote about that. He's one of my favorites. He said, when you see a black person killing another black person, and you wonder why, just as you see white people killing black people, there's something in common there. They see no value in the lives of other black people. And it's like this. So, internalized racism is real. Self-hatred is real. A study was done. It's called the Entman study, and it studied media and how black and brown people are portrayed in the media. The majority of the time when crime or poverty is covered in the media, they will show a black or brown person's face. When they're talking about success, they show white people, even though the majority, like the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs in the country are black. The black women have the highest college graduation rate in the country. But the majority of the time when you hear success in the news, you see white people. The majority of the time when you see crime and poverty, you see black people. If you see a black criminal being arrested, he's in handcuffs. If you see a white criminal, they're allowed to check into jail whenever they want. Usually they're wearing a suit. And so this study showed how we were portrayed. And then if you look at the doll study, the Anderson Cooper doll study, it showed how implicit biases are formed by the age of 5 in children. It showed white children, and they put a whole bunch of dolls in front of them, and their skin color is from very white to very black. And they ask the kids, hey, they ask a white kid, show me the smart kid. And the white kid points to the white doll. Mm-hmm. Show me the good kid. He points to the white doll. Mm-hmm. Show me the bad doll. And he points to the black doll. And show me the ugly doll. Points to the black doll. Show me the criminal, Mm-hmm. And then they show a black kid the same dolls and say, show me the good kid. Points to the white doll. Show me the smart kid. Points to the white doll. Mm-hmm. Show me the bad kid. And the black kid points to the black doll. And to me, this study proves that what black kids and white kids see in the media, the negative stereotypes, affect black kids and white kids the same way. They see less value in the lives of black people.
Yeah.
And so when you see black people killing other black people, as I said, it's intraracial, but it's because they see no value in their own skin.
And that the premise of this book is there's one detective who his famous saying is every murder victim was somebody's little baby.
Yeah.
So he decides to investigate every murder case as if it's somebody's precious little baby. And he's put on to solve this murder in this book. And he's a rare police detective, incredibly skilled with finding leads, following leads. He solves this case. And the reason why he's put on that case is it was the son of a police detective who was killed.
Yeah.
So he got that special treatment in his case. This was the case of Bryant Tonelli was his name. A 19-year-old boy, not in any gangs, but he had a tattoo, he had an earring, and he maybe looked a little bit gang-related. He was shot and killed, in broad daylight. And but because those lives aren't valued, because it's like it's happening with impunity, there's this huge vacuum of power. And if the gang can occupy that vacuum and they can assert justice in the way they see fit, that's really what's happening in these inner cities. And that's the huge problem of the murder rate of so many blacks being so high. It's the justice is happening by gangs.
Yeah.
That power vacuum is being filled by the gangs. And the reason why kids dress up wearing gang outfits, wearing tattoos and earrings, is they don't feel safe unless they do. That was the big revelation to me, is to feel safe, they have to comply and fit in, wear the gang banging outfits, wear the tattoos, you have the tattoos. If they don't, as it's pointed out in this book, they are typically the murder victims. The ones who don't fit in, the ones who aren't street smart, the ones who wear white boy clothing, whatever, those are the ones that are typically the murder victims. And so that was the huge revelation I found from reading that book. And would you say that that's true and that's accurate?
Well, gangs were actually created to police the police, because the police would just terrorize black communities. And so the first gangs were created just to protect black communities. I think gangs have, evolved or devolved through the decades. But again, I have to say this is such a small percentage of Black people who are in gangs. I mean, as I said, Black women have the highest college graduation rate. We are the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs in this nation.
Yeah.
Black communities are rising, and you hear about some gang violence in some cities, and it's just like Obama said, if drugs is the only employer in your neighborhood, that's who you're going to be employed with. When these companies have had like Wells Fargo have pulled out of Baltimore and have taken all of the jobs out of Black and brown communities, and the government is not helping, and these cities devolve. Flint, Michigan used to be one of the most prosperous cities in the nation until GM pulled out of Flint, and then it went from one of the most prosperous to one of the highest murder rates in the nation. Yeah. So we need jobs and resources in Black and brown communities, and that's just not happening, especially under this president.
Yeah, well, you talk about how what the media portrayal isn't accurate to the picture of reality.
Yeah.
And I think that's absolutely correct.
Yeah.
I mean, just a little story. I was in Fairmount Park working on another story about the fallen trees there, taking pictures with my drone. I lost my key to my car. I'm calling a locksmith. This Black kid comes up to me and says, "Hey, can I saw you're looking all over the place or something. Can I help you?" And I was like, "Yeah, I lost my key. I guess I got to call a locksmith." For the next hour, he recruited other people to help find my key. I knew it was somewhere on the ground. He recruited all these other kids playing soccer to help find my key. And it was like one of the coolest experiences I've had living in Salt Lake. This one guy, he's a black kid from Saudi Arabia, was an immigrant here, was playing soccer with all these other Sudanese immigrants in Fairmount Park, and they were all looking for my key for like 30 minutes till they found it.
Nice.
And they pulled it up, and they, "Hey, I got it." And it was just unbelievably awesome. Yeah,
the crowd cheered.
Yeah, and I just couldn't believe the level of caring and thought for your neighbor that I saw that day. And it's like, and so it framed this whole question for me in a new light. It's like, the media portrayal is that Black on Black crime is awful. The inner cities are awful. Black Lives Matter wants to riot and cause destruction. But then the reality is, here's a group of Black kids who just wanted to help me find my key. And I can't imagine any other people actively going away from their game to do something like that. So thoughtful. It was just cool. And I look at what's happening around the country and the violence, and your group, your organization is anti-violent, but there are other Black Lives Matter chapters that want to defund the police, right? And they want to just abolish the police. Is that accurate? Well,
when we talk about violence, let's talk about Proud Boys, 3%ers, UCA, white supremacists. Let's talk about that too.
Antifa.
Well, I mean, I don't even want to touch that right now, because it's just, they'll say, well, Lex was condoning Antifa. Well, Antifa means anti-fascist, okay? And I don't know a ton about Antifa, but I do know that I've seen video after video of white supremacists attacking people in Portland and in Seattle and in Utah. We were attacked by some white supremacists last month at our protest, and a white supremacist was arrested.
Proud Boys or a group like that.
Yeah, and so with Black Lives Matter, I believe it is a movement, not an organization. There are chapters that want to defund the police. Some chapters, what that means is reallocating money to better resources, social programs. So what does that mean? That means that the police have an MRAP, okay? It's like a tank. The police don't need a tank. We have a military. We have a National
Cottonwood Heights
Guard.
has a tank, right?
Right? Yeah.
This suburban, tiny little police department. Let's pull out the tank.
Yeah. They're, and so we're saying, I mean, because our chapter is for reallocating funds as well. I think the word defund it scares people. It makes people think, oh, you want to take all the money from cops and they don't have any money. And what we're saying in our chapter is, hey, we don't want the police to have militarized gear. I have asked for money so that every police officer in Unified can have a body cam. Only half of their officers have body cams. I have asked for money for less than lethal weapons. I said, instead of giving the police money towards militarized gear, why don't you take that money and put it into social programs like legal services for the homeless? The police over-arrest the homeless and target them. And I feel like it's really not okay. We need a center which just has some lawyers in it so that when homeless people are targeted, they can go in there and talk to a lawyer about their case. I would like to see money put into rehab and treatment centers. We are over-arresting people with addiction problems instead of giving them drug and alcohol treatment,
Yeah, and I agree with you. The biggest problem we find in both homelessness and prison populations is mental illness.
Yeah.
And that's not being addressed.
Yes.
It's not being taken care of. Instead, they find possession charges or anything to just say, oh, you need to get off the street and let's book you in prison. Let's not even address your mental illness. And I covered homelessness for 3 years in downtown Salt Lake, and that is absolutely true.
Now, let me tell you, people scream, abolish the police, abolish the police, abolish the police. And to me, those people are full of it, because screaming abolish the police will not abolish the police. But you're so edgy because you scream abolish the police. Let me tell you what I've done to abolish the police, okay? There is a company called Secure, Secure. It is like Uber for security guards. And what it does is, if you are a person like here, you have a security problem, you open your app, you click on the Secure app, they send you a security guard, and they charge just like Uber, and that security guard will come and handle the situation. Black and brown people don't want to call the police. So if we have a security issue, we now have the option to go to this app Secure, get a security guard to come to our situation. Am I saying, hey, get rid of all police? I'm saying no, but people like me cannot call the police. I'm trying everything I can to get around calling the police. And so with the Secure app, if it took over the nation and was successful.
So is this a private company then?
It's a private company.
And how do you know those people will be not prejudiced or racist?
Because I sat down with the owners of the company 6 months before they launched the app, helped them write the code of conduct, helped them write diversity procedures.
That's a really interesting idea.
Everything.
I haven't heard about that.
Well, because if we had private security firms take over policing, and Black communities across this nation, this isn't a new idea. In Atlanta, where they don't want cops in their neighborhood, they have private security forces. And it's sad that we have to get to the point where, police are paid with our taxpayer dollars. They work for us. But we would rather pay money for private security than have a cop come. So
I'd definitely rather call them than Cottonwood Heights police.
Right? And it's
I
like,
live close to there now. I'm not calling the police.
I'm not over here saying, hey, we're going to abolish the police. I'm over here saying, honestly, let's be realistic. The police exist, okay? The police exist. And people are screaming, abolish the police. Well, I'm going to reform the police. I'm going to pass for lasting and substantive, I can't even pronounce that, police reforms.
Yeah.
so that we can hold police accountable for their actions.
Well, and I like that approach so much better, because whenever you have people who don't adhere to the law, and they really don't have a reason to adhere to the law, they're just disenfranchised, there's a power vacuum. And in that, they could easily use what they have, their indiscriminate behavior, to go rob people, to take their things, to murder, do whatever they want. And that power vacuum is always going to be filled by one thing or another.
Yeah.
And if we don't trust the police, then that vacuum just exists, and it's inherently always going to be filled by the worst sort of people.
Yeah.
Because the worst people end up being the toughest, the most violent, the most brutal. And so I think there always has to be a mechanism in place for people to feel like their legal and justice needs are being met.
Yeah, and it would be amazing if we had a criminal justice system where we could call the police and no, we wouldn't be killed when they show up. It'd be amazing if we believed in the criminal justice system and they weren't unfairly targeting Black and brown people. And as I said before, I don't know what the police do, because to me, I don't see them doing anything, and
that creates an environment that creates an environment which is rife for corruption. If they're there, they don't really know what they're doing. They're kicking around. They're blowing off time. What are they going to do? Oh, there's a business owner. There's a bar. I don't really like that guy. How about we just target his business and put him out of business?
Yesterday, I was furious because I went to the 7-Eleven, and it's the last time I'm ever going to go there. And there were just a ton of police cars outside, and police were just hanging out in there, eating donuts, drinking coffee. And this is something that is not rare. They hang out, they get free coffee, they get free drinks, they get closed parking spaces, they get all these things.
My friend's restaurant, an officer used to come in and not expect to ever have to pay.
Yeah, never. And I was just thinking, you are getting paid taxpayer dollars to sit here in this place. And so, with police, there's something called the Ferguson Effect. And I love it. Basically, it means since Ferguson, police departments cannot fill their recruiting quotas. The majority of police officers are coming to retirement age. They are not getting new recruits who are applying. People are retiring by the truckloads. People are quitting by the truckloads. Yeah. I mean, it's proven. There's no correlation. There's no direct correlation between higher crime rates in a city and the number of police officers. People assume, oh my gosh, if all the police go away, this whole world will just be filled with crime and we'll live in the wild, wild west. Incorrect. Higher crime rates are correlated to, the poverty rate. The lack of employment options, the lack of treatment centers, mental health and drug addiction treatment centers. I don't believe having more police officers will lower crime rates or make, have crime rates go up. So, but
that power vacuum has to be filled.
What do you mean?
It has to be filled with where if people see the opportunity to commit crime with impunity. They will. I mean, certain people will.
Why do you think that?
Why do I think
Why
that?
do you think that?
Because look at South Central LA. Look at Ghetto Side. There is no repercussion if you go murder somebody on the street. That's why it happens.
You're saying that if people don't have police around, they're going to commit crimes.
If they don't have police they can trust. If they have a police department and they feel like they cannot trust them, if they feel like they cannot call them for justice, there's going to be more crime. I
don't think there's a correlation between crime and police because New York City.
I'll research that because I think that's an interesting point that you bring that up because stop and frisk was the most unpopular law ever passed in New York City.
Correct.
However, as a direct result of stop and frisk, you saw a decline in the crime rates.
This is me booing you. I'm going to disagree. We're going to agree to disagree on stop and frisk and a decline in the crime rate. New York City New York City back in the 80s, because I'm very old. I remember like it just had this reputation of, oh my God, it's so crime ridden. It was so, and they have probably per capita they had the most officers, and they didn't increase their police or anything like that. But you know, there's cities like this city right here. This is where I grew up. Okay. This is where I grew up. I'm going to tell a story. This is a bad story. I've never told this story. I probably shouldn't tell this story. This is my neighborhood that I grew up in, okay? Where we're sitting right here. There aren't police here, okay? There aren't police here.
Where's your neighborhood?
So when I was 1, we moved to Maurice Drive. So if you go to the end of the street, you take a left, you go 3 houses up, there's a Black Lives Matter flag outside. That is the house I grew up in half my childhood.
In Holiday?
Yeah.
Cool.
And then I also Wander Lane is 1 street down on 45th. Mm-hmm. I lived in a house on Wander Lane that burned down 6 years ago. And then if you go this way to Tanner Park, right? Mm-hmm. I lived right by Tanner Park.
Yeah, you grew up right around where I grew up.
So this is my hood. This is my neighborhood. And there aren't cops in this neighborhood. Okay. Mm-hmm. And, you know, in college, you know, if we were, this is really bad that I'm about to say this.
Go for it.
This is horrible. I am a alcoholic. I have 3 years sober. Okay. But in college I wasn't. And if we were clubbing downtown or something, this is horrible. And I was a little tipsy or something. I get in my car and I drive to the east side. Okay. You know why? There's no cops on the east side.
Yeah.
You can commit whatever crime you want here. There are no police here. Mm-hmm. If I was busted, do you think there would be a higher crime rate? If police patrolled neighborhoods here, do you think there would be a higher crime rate? Absolutely. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. They would rather target black and brown neighborhoods. And that is exactly what they do. Mm-hmm. Just because you don't see cops in this neighborhood doesn't mean there isn't crime in this neighborhood. My husband's parents live in the really nice house up here by Skyline. And they're always telling us of the drug busts that happen in their neighborhood, the domestic violence, all of these things.
Right around Skyline?
Yes. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And when I go to their house, I make jokes and I go, we got to get out of here fast. We don't want to get shot around here. You know, but yet still, even with the presence of drugs, white people buy drugs, heroin, meth, you know, cocaine. Mm-hmm. Even with the presence of drugs, domestic violence, police standoffs that happen up here, there is still a lower police presence here. You will not find a cop here. And that's on purpose.
Well, but don't you find that there is a lot fewer types of crime around here that would require policing?
Negative.
Really?
There is just as much crime on the east side that there is on the west side.
Again, I want to check. I would like to check and research
that's
that.
Why I want data collection, because
I mean, I went to Skyline and there were so many rich kids who were freaking thieves. They would steal everything. They went up to these one group of kids I knew. They went up to Park City. They targeted a locally owned business, JanSport, because they knew they could just make away with thousands of dollars worth of jackets. Yeah. And everybody knew they did this. And they got busted, luckily. But it's like
what year
there
did
were
you go
so
to
many
Skyline?
thieves.
What year?
I graduated in 94.
Whoa. You're older than me?
Am I older than you?
Wow. You look great.
I'm pretty old.
You look great,
wow,
buddy.
Thanks.
You look amazing, buddy. But
did you go to Skyline?
No, I went to Olympus.
Oh,
Olympus.
Okay. Yeah.
I wanted to go to Skyline. My mom wouldn't let me go.
I didn't like.
She said there's too many,
especially the last 2 years.
Too many rich kids. But what I was saying is, this is why I want data collection, because when I want to prove to people, hey, you know, black people are 2% of the population in Utah. We're being pulled over at 11 times the rate of white people. So if you're not ever pulling white people over, You're going to only find crimes that black people commit.
Well, my friend told me this. So I went into my friend's shop. He always has great discussions going on in his shop. And I'm like, I've been thinking about racism a lot, and I'm trying to figure out, am I a racist? And because you're trying to understand racism today. And so we had all these stories. I won't recount them, but he told me for 2 years he had to drive a 97 Civic around. This was like in 2007. So he's driving a 20-year-old car. He was pulled over more in that 97 Civic in 1 year than he'd ever been pulled over in the time since. And he just said the cops are constantly looking for super poor people.
Yes.
With bad cars.
Yep.
With like who look like they're not keeping things up.
Yeah.
Because that is an easy possession charge right there.
You know what he needs to do? He needs to throw a Black Lives Matter sticker on his car. Because ever since I did, they haven't messed with me. They used to pull me over so much, and you know, I mean, they can't.
See the YouTube videos. Man,
yeah, they can't pull me over anymore. I'm like bulletproof. Like they can't pull me over because they know.
Yeah.
They can't get me. But regarding your "Are you a racist?" thing, I want to address that. Mm-hmm. Because white people in Utah. First of all, this is a really non-confrontational state.
Yeah.
It's very uncomfortable to talk about race for white people and racism. They're very afraid to talk about it because their number one fear is being called a racist. And I just like to tell people, hey, I don't care if you have 100 black friends, because the first thing white people in Utah say is, hey, I'm not racist. My best friend is black.
Yeah.
I'm not racist.
I knew this black dude.
I knew a black guy.
I totally hung out with him for a while.
They know exactly, you know. I just want to say every single white person is capable of doing something racist and racially insensitive. You may not be a clan, KKK clan card carrying racist, but white people need to stop doing racist things and saying, I'm not racist, I have a black friend. I'm not racist, I grew up in a black neighborhood. I'm not racist, I did my mission in Haiti.
Yeah. I had a black roommate or I had a black friend.
They have to stop doing it.
So what this discussion kind of came down to was, is it okay to make preconceived ideas about a person or a group of people based on what has personally happened to you? So let me give you an example. I went to a conference in Denver. There was a Latino guy who was hosting me at his Airbnb, his illegal Airbnb. You're not allowed to have him there, but I got one anyway. And he said he just got out of Chicago. He had been shot once and stabbed twice, all by black guys. And he said, am I a racist because I'm afraid and I'm looking over my back to see if there's someone behind me who's black who might be carrying a weapon who's going to stab me? And it was a good question. I mean, if that had happened to me, is that racism?
Well, white people should be lucky that black people don't feel that way, because we've been so wronged by your people. We have been treated so badly by white people. The minute we're born, you know, the medical.
But I'm talking about the nature of racism.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
If you put the same exact lens on white people, if black people started being afraid of white people because of how we are treated by you,
that's
because white people treat us so badly.
In general, you think?
In general,
really,
every situation, at work, at church, at carnivals, at everywhere we go, we are treated badly. We are followed around stores, profiled in stores. We are denied housing because of the color of our skin. We're denied jobs because of the color of our skin. And, you know, and people say, well, I don't see color. You better see my color. My color is beautiful. And what it, you know, we're proud to be black.
I think for me, it has this caveat. If it's a black person who I'm looking at, and that person's dressed like me, dressed like an average person who is off the street, as opposed to a black person who's dressed in what looks like gang outfit. I'm going to have two different levels of fear there.
I'm so done. Let me tell you something. that Forerunner I pulled up in, okay? So I've made like a couple really big purchases this month, but I went to Chase Bank. And before I went, I was going to pull out $10,000 cash, okay? So I put on some pajamas and a hoodie. And I have flip-flops on. And I walked in there and I handed him my ID and I said, I want $10,000 cash. I want it in an envelope. And I dressed in pajamas on purpose. I need white people to respect black people, whether they're wearing a suit or whether they're wearing a hoodie. I need you to respect my life.
But I can't respect white people in that way.
Well, you need to respect everyone, no matter
Based on
what
how
they're
I
wearing.
can't make assumptions based on how they're dressed.
Do not make assumptions about someone based upon how they were dressed. My father is a very educated man. He grew up in the Jim Crow South. He's one of the few members of his family that made it out of Amarillo. Has his master's degree, played in the NFL. We think, just kidding. There's a whole conspiracy theory going on with that, me and my brother. And he, he had a very successful life, retired 30 years early and lived in Las Vegas. And when I was growing up, I went to private school my whole life. And every time we would go buy something, my father would dress like a total hobo, okay? And I mean it, okay? So embarrassing. And then he would drive. We had the nice car, and then we had the really crappy car. And if my dad was going to go buy something big, he would take the crappy car. He never wanted anyone to know he had money, ever. Because if you look at wealthy people like Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, they don't dress very nicely. Wealthy people often do not spend all their money on Gucci and Versace and Louis Vuitton.
Yeah, one of the wealthiest men in Utah walked through that door, and I actually thought he was a homeless person.
Yes.
And I found out who he was later, but
yeah,
he was seriously one of the wealthiest guys in Utah.
Wealthy people do not waste their money on clothes and cars. They invest in properties, annuities, investments.
Yeah, they're not all about trying to look the part.
Correct.
It's poor people who are trying to look wealthy who are
poor
playing that
people
part.
are trying to look wealthy, and
leveraged, highly leveraged people dress really, really nice.
Never judge anyone by how they're dressed and how they look. I need you to never do that.
But I'm talking just snap judgments. Like I'm walking late at night. I see a guy with a hoodie, bent over.
I'm done.
I don't know. I'm sorry, but I'm going to make an assumption. Why is the hoodie over your head? Why can't I see your face? Are you? And then it's just like the way people dress in general. I mean, you could look at going back in history. There's a whole play about this based on the story Pygmalion, My Fair Lady, where she talks like she's from the worst part of London. She acts like she dresses like she's in the worst part of London. Yeah. So everybody makes these assumptions about her. And then this elite aristocratic man teaches her how to speak properly, how to dress, and everybody instantly thinks she's from the bourgeoisie. So it's like, it's not a new idea. It's like everybody makes assumptions about the way people speak and the way they...
thing.
I know.
It's bad. You got to stop making snap judgments because of someone is dressed like this or someone does this. Because once I
get to talk to somebody, all that is going to fade away. Yeah. But you have to make discerning judgments as you go through your life on making snap judgments about everything, don't you?
I mean, I try not to make snap judgments about people. I try to get to know them.
I mean, that's always what you want to do.
But you know what? I did have this white girlfriend once, and I met her, and she's so pretty. Oh my God, she's the most prettiest girl ever. And I was just like, okay, rich white girl, how are you doing? And she actually didn't grow up wealthy. She grew up with a hoarder house, and her mom was a super drug addict hoarder. And so, yeah, I try not to make snap judgments about people, because if I did, well, I don't even like people in general. How about that? I don't even like people. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It's one of those things where I think we all wish we could adhere to that mindset, and we all wish we could not judge people based on their appearance.
Yeah.
But it's just impossible.
You got to. No, nothing is impossible. Nothing is impossible.
I think you're taking out 30 million years of evolution.
No.
Don't you think the cavemen walked around and they had to look at somebody and like, look at that guy's like bare skin. It's all raggedy.
Eating
he looks
disorders,
terrible. He hasn't.
Eating disorders were never present in the Pacific Islands until white media was introduced. Okay. Those women in Pacific Islander women felt very beautiful until European standards of beauty were entered into those islands. And that's when they saw the first episodes of eating disorders. So I believe that what you need to do is just try to check your implicit biases. Check your implicit biases.
Yeah.
Don't judge someone because of that they're wearing a hoodie.
I'm not going to judge them like, oh, that must be a terrible person.
Yeah.
I'm going to judge that person based on if I'm walking around, like sometimes I walk around at 2:00 in the morning and do a story. If I'm judging just based on my personal safety, should I cross the street or should I keep going straight?
I think you have a fear problem. You need to not ever have fear again. Fear will control your life and destroy your life. You have to be.
I don't feel like I have a fear problem.
You have
why
a
else
fear
would
problem.
I go out at 2:00 in the morning?
Guess
walking
what
around?
I do? Guess what I do? You have
you
a fear problem.
You went to Minneapolis during when the riots were happening, so you don't have a fear problem.
And Portland. I was in Portland and Ferguson.
And I got to see your footage that you
Nothing. I fear nothing. You know why? What you need to realize is what's the worst that can happen to me? I'm walking around at 2 a.m. What's worse is going to happen?
Yeah,
Someone's going to kill me?
That's what I thought.
Someone's going to kill me? Oh, well.
Oh, well, it'll be an atypical funeral. And
don't do the world any favors, buddy. Don't save the white supremacists some time.
Yeah. Well, I think I don't know. I think we all want to. I feel like we live in a highly politically correct society, which actually hides the implicit bias we have. I'd rather bring it out to the forefront and say, I'm going to look at you if you're wearing a hoodie and you're pulling your pants down and you look like a gangbanger. I'm going to be like maybe afraid.
Someone save me from this interview. God.
I can't say that. Okay.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Stop. Guess who owns hoodies? Every black Harvard professor. Guess who owns hoodies? Every black Princeton professor. Guess who owns hoodies? Oprah Winfrey, Charles Barkley, Barack Obama, Malia Obama, Obama.
It's gonna depend on the condition of the hoodie. It's gonna depend on the condition of the pants.
Done with you.
Okay.
I am done.
I had a feeling that I wouldn't be politically correct enough.
It's not about being politically correct. People that say I don't want to be politically correct, basically they want to be able to offend black and brown people without
But I'm not even talking about black and brown people. I'm talking about white people.
White people
If I
too?
see any white person dressed a certain way, I'm going to make a judgment about them. I'm talking about any person wearing.
Can you try not to? Can you try to say, you know what?
Don't you think it's better that I admit it? I do.
I love honesty. I love honesty.
Yeah.
You can't offend me. I'm Lex. You can't offend me. Mm-hmm. Okay, Curly? Now listen. You can't offend me. But what I want you to do is try. I want you to try.
Oh, I try. And I even go and talk to him. So the 2 years ago, I did a whole story following a guy around who looked extremely shady, wore a hoodie. He had MRSA all over his legs. His name was Ben. I followed him for 3 days. I think he's died. He had severe mental illness. He had bipolar. He wasn't getting the meds he needed. I did a story about homelessness in Utah and the problem with mental illness. It's really pervasive. So I'll talk to that person, but am I going to feel fear? Yes. The first time I go talk to that person, I'm going to feel a little bit afraid.
What are you afraid of?
I'm
Dying?
afraid. I guess I'm afraid of death.
Embrace death. Embrace it. Now, when you think of death, what scares you about death?
I think only thing that is lingering in a hospital bed for a long period of time. If I was just instantly killed, no problem.
Okay,
but lingering in a hospital bed for an extended period of time.
So go sign up for a DNR. Go get a DNR. Do not resuscitate. Mm-hmm. You have to face what scares you about death. I used to be afraid of death, and it was because I didn't want... Well, I'm not going to say that. I don't want the white supremacists to know my one fear, right? But then I was like, wait, okay. And then I found a way around of being afraid of death.
Yeah.
You know, and now I'm not afraid of death. Once you
I don't think I'm afraid of death. I actually don't.
Afraid?
I think I'm afraid of long, anguishing pain that would be a burden on my family. Because I didn't have insurance for 20 years. Wow. Happily didn't have insurance. And I'd kind of boast about it because I'm just not afraid of dying. Yeah. What I'm afraid of is like, oh, you're going to be in this hospital bed and you're going to be, DNR would be a good idea.
No, it's Fox 13.
Oh, you got to go.
Yeah.
Thank you for staying so long.
No, it's okay.
Went way longer than
it's okay.
we planned on. and I'm sorry if I don't know. I guess I'm not. What I should say is, I'm gonna wear my heart on my sleeve. Yeah. I'm gonna say if I'm afraid of something.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid of certain people, the way they
Don't
walk,
be afraid.
and I shouldn't be afraid.
What I understand.
I can see that.
Hey, you lived a good life, right?
Yeah.
Probably,
yeah.
Right? You lived a good life. Just embrace death, because think every day this could be your last day on earth.
That's true.
And if you die, oh well.
Yeah.
If this person I've had people run at me with guns and I didn't flinch. What are they going to do? Kill me? Oh, well, like who cares?
Yeah.
You can't do anything about this man who's going to kill you. Mm-hmm. Okay. You can't do anything if this person over here is going to kill you or hurt you or whatever. Just embrace the fact that you could die any moment.
Yeah. And I think the idea is be honest. I think that's all. I like people. I like being around people who are honest. You're obviously an honest person. You wear your heart on your sleeve too.
Oh,
I can see that too. So it's.
I love Black people. I love Black Lives Matter. I love this movement, and I also hate this movement because it's really traumatic and painful and everything. But I love that we finally have a chance to get justice for police brutality victims. And just before I head out, I just want to say Patrick Harmon and Cindrea Europe and Bobby Duckworth and Dylan Taylor and James Barker and
I know
Cody Bellegarde
some of those names, and those are definitely
Diamante Rivera. All of these people, Zane James, all of these people deserve justice, and I feel like God put me on this earth to get justice for some people, and he put this mission in my soul to get justice. And so keep us in your prayers, and then call me if you're scared in the middle of the night. I'll come over there. Okay, I better run out of here, you guys.
But I hope you come back.
I
would
loved
love
it.
to have you come
I had
back.
a fun time. We could have gone a lot longer.
Yeah, we could have. You're easy to talk to.
All
right. Thanks a lot, Lex. The Utah Stories Show is sponsored by Green Bike. Salt Lake City's nonprofit bike share connects employment and residential centers to transit stops and popular entertainment destinations. Green Bike seeks to improve community health, air quality, and increase the use of existing transit infrastructure. Green Bike is a local nonprofit and public-private partnership between Salt Lake City, the Utah Transit Authority, Select Health, and other provider sponsors. To date, Green Bikers have removed 5.8 million vehicle miles from local roads, prevented more than 5 million pounds of CO2 from entering our air, all while burning 76 million calories in the process. That's 267,000 slices of pizza. Get on a green bike. To learn more about green bikes, find out how you can take as many rides as you want for a year for less than 20 cents a day. Follow Green Bike on social media at SLC Bike Share or visit greenbikeslc.org. All right, thank you for listening, everybody. And if you like this podcast, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. That's always very helpful. Or give us a 5-star review on iTunes. Share it with a friend. Any way we can continue to gin up interest in what it is we're doing here at Utah Stories. It's the voice of local Utah. If you think coverage like that is needed and necessary, help us out by spreading the word. You can also subscribe to our digital newsletter by visiting utahstories.com. You'll get a little email in your inbox once a week every time we release a new podcast, and we'll tell you about all of our stories and content that are in our brand new issue of Utah Stories magazine, which is out for probably a month before our next issue comes out. But if you want to get your hands on this, I highly suggest you go out to an Associated Food store along the Wasatch Front and ask for it, because they tend to run out very quickly. Our show producer is Connie Lewis, our technical producer is Tyler Bond, and our digital publisher is Golda Hugic Markosian. This has been a Markosian Media production. I'll see you next time.